The CEO fired me after I taught their son to read, so I licensed the $1 million program. At 23, Elena Duarte left Argentina for a nanny job in one of Seattle's wealthiest homes. The boy she cared for was silent, anxious, and unable to read. She changed that. But her success wasn't welcomed by everyone. One morning, she was dismissed without warning. No explanation, no thanks. What no one expected was what she did next. Because when you silence the wrong woman, she doesn't disappear. She reinvents everything. Subscribe to the channel and follow Elena's story. What happened after she was fired, no one saw coming. The next part will leave you speechless. Chapter 1. The Opportunity. The Seattle rain pelted against the taxi window as Elena Duarte gazed up at the imposing glass and steel mansion perched on the hillside. 23 years old, with nothing but 2 suitcases and a teaching degree from Buenos Aires that meant little in the United States, she felt her stomach tighten. The sprawling Walker estate loomed before her, intimidating in its perfection. Manicured gardens, sweeping driveway, floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the stormy northwest sky. "You sure this is the right address, miss?" the taxi driver asked, eyebrows raised as he glanced at the meter. The fare had climbed well past $50 since leaving downtown. Elena nodded, her dark hair falling across her face. "Yes, this is it." She handed over the last of her carefully budgeted cash and stepped out into the rain, her practical boots immediately splashing in a puddle. Adrian Walker, CEO of Next Tech Solutions, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the Pacific Northwest, had advertised for a live-in nanny with exceptional qualifications for his 6-year-old son. The salary was triple what Elena could hope to make elsewhere with her limited work visa, and it included room and board in one of Seattle's most exclusive neighborhoods. As she approached the door, it swung open before she could knock. A tall man with steel gray eyes and a meticulously trimmed beard stood there, his expression calculating as he assessed her. "Miss Duarte?" His voice matched his appearance, precise, controlled, brooking no nonsense. "Yes, Mr. Walker. Elena Duarte." She extended her hand, determined not to show her nervousness. "Thank you for this opportunity." His handshake was brief, efficient. "You're late. The agency said you'd be here by 3. Elena glanced at her watch. 3:07 p.m. "I apologize. The traffic from downtown was—" "I don't have time for excuses. Come in." He turned on his heel, expecting her to follow. "Mrs. Phillips, our housekeeper, will show you to your quarters. Dinner is at 6 sharp. Leo will be home from his therapy session at 6:30. You'll meet him then." The interior of the house was a minimalist showcase of wealth. Open concept with soaring ceilings, artwork that Elena recognized as museum-worthy, and furniture that looked more sculptural than functional. Everything was in muted tones of gray, white, and black. "Your resume states you have a teaching degree?" Adrian asked without turning around. "Yes, early childhood education from the University of Buenos Aires. I specialized in literacy development." He made a non-committal sound. "Leo has the best tutors money can buy. Your job is companionship and basic care. The educational professionals handle his learning." Elena followed him through the house until they reached a cozy sitting area where a woman in her 60s waited, her kind face a stark contrast to Adrian's severity. "This is Mrs. Phillips. She's been with our family for 12 years. She'll explain how things work around here." With that, Adrian checked his watch and frowned. "I have a conference call. Mrs. Phillips will handle the rest." He strode away, already reaching for his phone. "Don't mind him, dear," Mrs. Phillips said, once he was out of earshot. "He's been through a lot since Mrs. Walker passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He throws himself into his work, and Leo has had a difficult time." Elena set down her suitcase. The learning difficulties, the job listing mentioned. Mrs. Phillips sighed. Leo's a bright boy, clever as they come, but reading, it just won't click for him. Mr. Walker's hired specialist after specialist, but nothing helps. The school wants to hold him back, and Mr. Walker is, she hesitated, not handling it well. What about his mother, before she passed away? She was the one who read to him every night. Such a lovely woman Sarah was, teacher herself before she married Mr. Walker. Mrs. Phillips's eyes misted. Leo hasn't touched a book since she died. Elena felt a tug in her heart. I understand loss. My father died when I was 7. Mrs. Phillips squeezed her hand. Perhaps that's why the agency sent you. Come, let me show you your room. Later that evening, Elena met Leo Walker for the first time. He was small for 6, with his father's serious gray eyes, but a mop of unruly brown hair that must have come from his mother. He stood in the doorway of the dining room, regarding Elena with suspicion. "You're not Miss Jennings," he said flatly. "No, I'm Elena. Miss Jennings had to leave, and I'm your new nanny. You talk funny." "Leo," Adrian warned. "It's okay," Elena smiled. "I'm from Argentina. That's why I have an accent." Leo's eyes widened slightly. "Where's Argentina?" "It's in South America. I could show you on a map if you'd like." The boy shrugged, but Elena caught a flicker of interest before it disappeared behind a practiced indifference. "Leo doesn't like maps," Adrian interjected, "or books." There was a challenge in his tone. Elena met his gaze steadily. "Everyone likes stories, Mr. Walker. Sometimes we just haven't found the right one yet." Adrian's phone buzzed, and he checked it immediately, effectively ending the conversation. "I have a conference call. Leo, eat your dinner and behave for Ms. Duarte." As he left the room, Leo pushed his peas around his plate. "He's always working," the boy mumbled. "Your father has an important job," Elena said gently. "More important than me?" It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact the child had long accepted. Elena leaned forward. "You know what? I bet we could find something that would make him so proud he'd put down his phone and pay attention." Leo looked up, doubt and hope warring in his expression. "Like what?" "Like learning to read so well you could read him a story." The boy's face fell. "I can't. I'm stupid." Elena felt a surge of determination. "Leo Walker, you are not stupid. I can tell just by talking to you that you're very smart, and I have a secret way of teaching reading that's different from what your tutors have tried." "Really?" The skepticism in his voice was heartbreaking in one so young. "Really. It's like a special code, and I think you'd be excellent at breaking codes. Would you like to try?" For the first time, a genuine smile tugged at Leo's lips. "Maybe." "Great. We'll start tomorrow." Elena gestured to his plate. "Now, eat your peas. Code breakers need their strength." As Leo reluctantly ate his vegetables, Elena glanced toward the doorway where Adrian had disappeared. This job would be challenging in ways the agency had never mentioned, but she was no stranger to challenges. Back home in Buenos Aires, she had developed a multisensory approach to teaching reading while working with children in underserved communities, a method that had shown remarkable results, especially with students who struggled with traditional approaches. If she could help Leo unlock the world of reading, maybe she could make a real difference in this broken family's life. And maybe, just maybe, she could start building a future for herself in this new country. If you're enjoying this story of determination and the life-changing power of education, make sure to hit that subscribe button. In our next chapter, you'll see how Elena's innovative teaching method transforms Leo's life and the unexpected consequences that follow. Don't miss it. Chapter 2: The Breakthrough. 3 weeks into her employment at the Walker Mansion, Elena sat cross-legged on the plush carpet of Leo's bedroom, surrounded by colorful cards, clay letters, and a tablet displaying an interactive storybook she'd created herself. The rain outside had given way to one of Seattle's perfect summer afternoons, sunlight streaming through the windows and casting golden rectangles across the floor. "I can read it again?" Leo asked, his voice tinged with disbelief as he clutched the simple storybook Elena had made specifically for him, a tale about a boy who discovered a secret garden in his backyard with vibrant illustrations and carefully selected words that played to Leo's strengths. "Of course you can," Elena beamed at him, her heart swelling with pride. The change in Leo over these 3 weeks had been remarkable. Elena's method combined tactile learning, forming letters with clay and tracing them with fingers dipped in paint, with visual and auditory components tailored to Leo's specific processing patterns. She'd quickly identified that Leo's struggle wasn't intellectual, but related to how his brain processed written language. Her approach, developed during her university studies and refined in the community centers of Buenos Aires, targeted these specific challenges. "Miss Duarte?" Mrs. Phillips appeared in the doorway, her expression unusually tense. "Mr. Walker would like to see you in his office. Immediately." Elena glanced at Leo, who had already turned back to his book, sounding out words with newfound confidence. "I'll be right back, Leo. Keep practicing that page." Adrian Walker's home office occupied the entire east wing of the second floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Washington. When Elena entered, he was standing with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him as he gazed out at the view. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Walker." He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Leo's teacher called me today." Elena waited, uncertain whether this was good news or bad. "She says he volunteered to read aloud in class. Apparently, he read an entire paragraph without assistance. She was quite surprised." "That's wonderful," Elena smiled, genuine pleasure warming her voice. "He's been working so hard." "Yes, about that." Adrian moved to his desk, picking up a folder. "Mrs. Phillips tells me you've been using some sort of special method with him, something not approved by his educational therapist." Elena straightened her spine. "With all due respect, Mr. Walker, the approved methods weren't working for Leo. I've been using a multisensory approach I developed while working with children in Argentina. It addresses the specific ways Leo processes written language." "And you didn't think to consult me before experimenting on my son?" His tone had sharpened. "I wasn't experimenting. I was applying proven techniques tailored to Leo's needs." Elena took a deep breath. "Mr. Walker, Leo isn't struggling because he's not trying or because he's not intelligent. His brain processes written information differently. My method works with his natural learning style instead of against it." "And where did you get your expertise in learning disabilities, Miss Duarte? Your resume mentioned a teaching degree, not specialized training in dyslexia." "My university thesis was on alternative approaches to literacy for children with processing differences. I developed this method during my final year and continued refining it while working in community centers in Argentina. It works, Mr. Walker. You've seen the results yourself." Something flickered across Adrian's face, a complex emotion Elena couldn't quite name. "Leo has been different lately, more confident. He actually told me about a book yesterday." He paused. "It's the first time he's voluntarily discussed reading with me since Sarah died." The mention of Leo's mother hung in the air between them. Elena waited, sensing there was more. Adrian abruptly changed the subject. "Leo's school is hosting a reading achievement celebration next week. His teacher suggested he participate, given his sudden improvement." "That would be wonderful for him," Elena said. "Recognition could further boost his confidence." "Perhaps." Adrian's tone cooled again. But I want to be clear, Ms. Duarte. While I appreciate Leo's progress, in the future, you will consult me before implementing any unorthodox teaching methods. I employ educational specialists for a reason. Of course, Elena replied, though inwardly she questioned whether those specialists had truly understood Leo's needs. Is there anything else? Adrian hesitated, then said, Leo mentioned you created special materials for him, books or something? Yes, I've been writing simple stories that incorporate his interests and vocabulary level, with illustrations that provide context clues. I programmed an interactive version on the tablet as well. You wrote them yourself and programmed them? Yes. In Argentina, we often had to create our own materials due to limited resources. It helps to have content precisely targeted to the learner's needs. Adrian studied her for a long moment. I see. That will be all, Ms. Duarte. As she turned to leave, he added, Leo's bedtime is 8:30, not 9, not 9:15, 8:30 precisely. Elena nodded, recognizing the subtle reprimand for the flexibility she'd shown with Leo's schedule when he was engaged in reading. Back in Leo's room, she found him still absorbed in his book, mouthing the words as his finger traced each line. Looking at him, Elena felt a fierce pride that outweighed her frustration with Adrian. Whatever the father's issues might be, Leo was blossoming, and that was what mattered most. Did I do something wrong? Leo asked, looking up with worried eyes that reminded Elena how perceptive children could be. Not at all, she assured him, sitting back down beside him. Your dad just wanted to talk about how well you're doing with your reading. In fact, your teacher told him how great you did in class today. Really? Dad knows? He does. And guess what? There's a special reading celebration at your school next week, and your teacher thinks you should be part of it. Me? Leo's eyes widened with a mixture of excitement and fear. But what if I mess up? Elena squeezed his shoulder gently. Then you'll try again. That's what brave people do. And Leo, you're one of the bravest people I know. Braver than my dad? He asked in a small voice. Elena chose her words carefully. Different kinds of brave. Your dad is brave in business. You're brave because you keep trying even when things are hard. Leo considered this, then nodded solemnly. Like Mom was brave when she was sick? Yes, Elena whispered, her throat tight. Just like that. I want to read at the celebration, Leo decided, his jaw set in determination. And I want Dad to come watch. Elena smiled, though a sense of unease fluttered in her stomach. Then we'd better practice, hadn't we? The day of the reading celebration arrived with unexpected sunshine, bathing the elementary school in warm light. Elena helped Leo into his carefully chosen outfit, nice enough to show respect for the occasion, but comfortable enough that he wouldn't be distracted by stiff collars or tight shoes. Is Dad coming? Leo asked for the third time that morning, peering anxiously out the window as they waited for Mrs. Phillips to bring the car around. He promised he would, Elena reassured him, though Adrian had been increasingly distant over the past week, working late and leaving early, barely interacting with either of them. Leo clutched his practice book to his chest. I want to show him I can do it. You will, Elena promised, her heart aching for how desperately this child sought his father's approval. When they arrived at the school, Elena was surprised to see not just parents and teachers gathered in the auditorium, but what appeared to be local media. A banner across the stage read, Celebrating Literacy Champions. Leo's teacher, Miss Winters, hurried over to them. There you are. Leo, you're going to be our special highlight today. We've had some important visitors come just to hear about your amazing progress. Elena frowned. I don't understand. Miss Winters lowered her voice. Mr. Walker called the superintendent. Apparently, he's quite interested in new teaching methods for reading difficulties. When he heard about Leo's remarkable improvement, he arranged for some coverage. It's wonderful publicity for the school. Before Elena could process this information, she spotted Adrian entering the auditorium, accompanied by several people in business attire. He didn't look their way, engaged in animated conversation with a woman holding a reporter's notebook. "Leo, why don't you go with Miss Winters to get ready?" Elena suggested, her instincts on high alert. "I need to speak with your father for a moment." She made her way through the crowd to Adrian, catching the tail end of his conversation. Revolutionary approach to dyslexia. We're looking at incorporating elements into Nextech's educational software division. The potential market is substantial. "Mr. Walker, I need to speak with you privately for a moment." Elena interrupted, keeping her voice low. Adrian smiled, though didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Duarte? Perfect timing. This is Jennifer Hayes from the Seattle Education Chronicle. She's doing a feature on innovative teaching methods. Jennifer, this is Elena Duarte, Leo's nanny who has a background in education." Elena felt herself being subtly diminished. Not Leo's teacher or educational specialist, but his nanny with a background. The reporter barely glanced at her before turning back to Adrian. "As you were saying about Nextech's new educational initiative?" "I'll be back in just a moment," Adrian assured the reporter before guiding Elena a few steps away, his hand firm on her elbow. "Is there a problem, Adrian?" "What's happening here?" Elena asked directly. "Leo thinks this is just a small school celebration. He's nervous enough without cameras and reporters." "This is an opportunity," Adrian replied, his voice cool. "Leo's success story can help other children. Isn't that what you want?" "Of course, but—" "Then we're aligned. Now, if you'll excuse me, the superintendent is waiting." As Adrian walked away, Elena noticed a banner she hadn't seen before, partially unfurled by the stage. Nextech Solutions presents The Walker Method for Reading Success. The pieces suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. Adrian wasn't just proud of his son's progress, he was commercializing it. And from the way he'd introduced her, it was clear she wasn't being included in the narrative. The celebration began with various students recognized for reading achievements. When it was Leo's turn, he walked to the microphone, visibly trembling but determinedly clutching his book. His eyes found Elena in the crowd, and she gave him an encouraging nod. "My name is Leo Walker. 3 months ago, I couldn't read. I thought I was stupid." A murmur went through the audience. "But Miss Elena showed me I wasn't stupid. My brain just works differently. She made special books for me and taught me with clay and colors and stories about things I like." Elena felt tears pricking her eyes as Leo continued, gaining confidence with each word. "Now I can read this whole book by myself." He held up the story Elena had created for him. It's about a boy who finds a magic garden, except it's not really magic. It's just that he never looked at it the right way before. That was like me with reading. The audience applauded as Leo read a full page flawlessly. When he finished, his eyes immediately sought out his father, who was watching with an unreadable expression, the superintendent whispering in his ear. As Leo returned to his seat, Adrian approached the microphone. "Thank you all for coming today to witness what I believe is the beginning of an educational revolution. What my son has experienced is the prototype of what we at Nextech are calling the Walker Method, a comprehensive approach to literacy that will soon be available to schools nationwide through our Educational Technology Division." Elena felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. The method Adrian was describing, her method, developed through years of study and practice, was being branded with his name, packaged as a Nextech product without a single mention of its actual origin. As the crowd applauded, Adrian continued, "We'll be launching a pilot program in select schools this fall with a full rollout planned for the following year. Nextech is committed to transforming education for all children who struggle with traditional learning methods." The rest of the event passed in a blur. Elena focused on Leo, making sure he received the praise he deserved for his hard work, while avoiding Adrian and the gathering of business people and reporters around him. It was only later, as they drove back to the Walker estate, that Leo broke the uncomfortable silence. "Dad didn't come talk to me after I read." Elena swallowed hard. "He was very busy with the school people." "But he saw me, right? He heard me read?" "He absolutely did, Leo, and I know he was proud." The words felt hollow, though Elena tried to infuse them with conviction. Leo nodded, seemingly satisfied, but the shadow in his eyes told a different story. When they arrived home, Mrs. Phillips met them at the door, her expression grave. "Elena, Mr. Walker would like to see you in his office immediately. Leo, come with me for a snack." With a sense of foreboding, Elena climbed the stairs to Adrian's office. This time, he was seated behind his imposing desk, hands steepled before him. "Close the door, Miss Duarte." Elena did as instructed, then stood waiting, chin lifted slightly. "I'll be direct," Adrian began. "Your employment with us is being terminated, effective immediately." Though she had half expected it, the words still hit like a physical blow. "May I ask why?" "Your relationship with Leo has become inappropriate. You're his nanny, not his teacher or parent. You've overstepped your boundaries repeatedly, implementing educational strategies without proper authorization, extending his bedtime, and today attempting to undermine a significant opportunity for both Leo and potentially thousands of other children." Elena couldn't hold back. "Inappropriate? I helped Leo learn to read when no one else could, and now you're taking my method, putting your name on it, and firing me?" Adrian's expression hardened. "Your method was developed while you were employed by educational institutions in Argentina, making it their intellectual property, not yours. Furthermore, any work you've done while employed by me belongs to this household. The legal standing is quite clear." "This isn't about legal standing," Elena retorted, anger rising. "This is about what's best for Leo." "I decide what's best for my son." Adrian's voice was ice. "Mrs. Phillips will help you pack your things. You'll be driven to a hotel of your choice in the city. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, and I'll provide a reference stating you fulfilled your basic duties adequately." "And Leo? What will you tell him?" Something flickered in Adrian's eyes, perhaps the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him. "That will be handled appropriately." "He deserves better than that," Elena said quietly. "He deserves the truth." "The truth, Miss Duarte, is that employees come and go. It's an important life lesson." Adrian stood, indicating the conversation was over. "I'll have our lawyer draw up a confidentiality agreement regarding your time in our household. I expect you will find it in your best interest to sign it." Elena stared at him, this man who had everything: wealth, power, a brilliant son, yet seemed to understand so little about what truly mattered. "You know what Leo told me his biggest wish was? Not to learn to read. Not for toys or games or any of the things you could easily buy him. He wished for you to be proud of him, to pay attention to him instead of your phone for just 5 minutes." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's enough. Please leave my house." As Elena turned to go, she added quietly, "The Walker method. At least you got the name right in one way. Leo did all the work, just like I did, but somehow you're the one taking the credit." Chapter 3. The Comeback. 11 months later. Elena adjusted her simple black blazer as she waited in the reception area of Bright Path Educational Publishers, the leather portfolio on her lap containing the culmination of nearly a year's worth of work, her complete literacy method, fully documented with sample materials, assessment tools, and case studies from the pilot program she'd run at Community Center in Seattle's Rainier Valley. The receptionist looked up with a smile. "Ms. Duarte? Mr. Ramirez will see you now." The past year had been the hardest of Elena's life. After being abruptly fired from the Walker household, she'd found herself in a foreign country with a rapidly dwindling savings and a broken heart, not just for herself, but for Leo, who she hadn't been allowed to properly say goodbye to. For weeks, she'd alternated between despair and rage, as Nextech began promoting the Walker Method in educational circles. The program, as described in press releases, was unmistakably her work, though diluted and commercialized in ways that made it less effective but more profitable. The turning point had come 3 months after her firing. While working as a barista to make ends meet, Elena had served coffee to Dr. Sophia Chen, a professor of educational psychology at the University of Washington. A chance conversation about learning differences had led to Elena sharing her story. What you're describing is intellectual theft, and worse, they're probably implementing it incorrectly without your expertise. But what can I do? He's a powerful CEO. I'm an immigrant with a temporary visa and no resources. Dr. Chen had smiled, a determined glint in her eye. You have your brain, your method, and now you have me. With Dr. Chen's mentorship, Elena had documented her method properly, conducted a small pilot program with the professor's help, and compiled the data that now filled her portfolio. They had approached BrightPath, a respected educational publisher known for evidence-based materials, rather than the tech companies that might have offered more money but less fidelity to Elena's vision. Miss Duarte. Miguel Ramirez rose from behind his desk, extending his hand. It's a pleasure to finally meet in person. Thank you for seeing me, Elena replied, shaking his hand firmly.
I've reviewed the materials you sent ahead. Impressive work. He gestured for her to sit, particularly the results from your pilot program. A 78% improvement rate is remarkable for students with processing difficulties. Elena felt a surge of pride. The key is the personalization. Each child's processing challenges are unique, so the approach must be adaptable. Miguel nodded thoughtfully. That's what distinguishes your method from others on the market, including the much-hyped Walker method that Nextech has been shopping around. At the mention of Adrian's program, Elena stiffened slightly. You're familiar with it? We were approached about publishing the physical materials to accompany their software. We declined. Miguel's expression was knowing. Their approach seemed derivative and suspiciously incomplete, as if designed by someone who understood the theory but not the practical application. I wouldn't know, Elena said carefully, though her heart raced. Miguel smiled. Of course. Well, I've asked Dr. Chen to join us for this meeting, as she's been your academic sponsor for this project. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door, and Sophia Chen entered, elegant in her typical professional attire, followed by another woman Elena didn't recognize. Older, stylishly dressed, with an air of quiet authority. Elena, good to see you, Dr. Chen said warmly. I'd like to introduce Patricia Winters, former Chief Legal Counsel for Macmillan Education, and now a consultant for BreakPath on intellectual property matters. Elena rose to shake her hand, confusion evident on her face. Miss Duarte, Patricia began once they were all seated. Dr. Chen has shared with me the general circumstances surrounding the development of your literacy method. I'd like to ask you some specific questions, if that's all right. For the next 30 minutes, Patricia led Elena through a detailed timeline: her education in Argentina, the development of her approach during her university years, her work in community centers, and finally, her brief employment with the Walker family. And during your time with the Walkers, did you ever sign any intellectual property agreements, any documents specifying that methods you developed belonged to Mr. Walker or his company? Elena shook her head. No, my employment contract was a standard nanny agreement. Hours, duties, compensation. There was nothing about intellectual property. Patricia made a note. And the confidentiality agreement he had you sign upon termination? It covered personal information about the family, nothing about educational methods or programs. Patricia exchanged a glance with Miguel. One final question. Do you have any documentation that clearly predates your employment with the Walkers? Anything showing you were using these methods before you ever met them? Elena's heart sank. Most of my materials were in Argentina. I had digital versions, but they were on the tablet I used with Leo, which belonged to the household. I see. Patricia looked disappointed, but not surprised.
Dr. Chin cleared her throat. Actually, there might be something. Elena, didn't you mention you submitted a digital copy of your thesis to the University of Buenos Aires Library Archive? Elena's eyes widened. Yes, my thesis documented the early version of the method and the initial testing I did. It was submitted 3 years ago. That would be extremely helpful, Patricia said, her expression brightening. With your permission, we can request a copy through academic channels. Miguel leaned forward. Ms. Duarte, while we sort out these legal matters, I want to be clear about Bright Path's position. We're prepared to offer you a contract to publish your literacy program under your name and with your direct involvement in its implementation. Dr. Chen has convinced us of both its efficacy and its originality. Elena felt dizzy with relief and disbelief. You want to publish my method, even with Nextech already marketing their version? Especially with Nextech marketing an inferior version, Miguel said firmly. Quality educational materials speak for themselves in the long run, and if we can establish prior art through your thesis, he glanced at Patricia. Then Nextech has a potential legal problem, Patricia finished. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. For now, let's focus on getting your program into the hands of teachers and children who can benefit from it. 6 months later, Elena smoothed her dress nervously as she waited backstage at the National Educational Innovation Conference. Through the curtain, she could see hundreds of educators, administrators, and educational technology specialists filling the auditorium. 5 minutes, Ms. Duarte, a stage manager informed her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chin. Packed house. You've got this. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. With Bright Path's support, the Duarte Method for Individualized Literacy had been published as a comprehensive program, teacher manuals, student materials, assessment tools, and a professional development component that Elena herself delivered to pilot schools. The results had been even better than the initial tests, with educators across the country reporting breakthrough successes with students who had previously struggled. Educational journals had published glowing reviews, and word was spreading rapidly through professional networks. Meanwhile, Nextech's Walker method had faltered after initial hype. Without Elena's expertise to guide implementation, schools reported mixed results and technical difficulties with the software components. Several had switched to Elena's program after the first semester. As she was lost in thought, Elena nearly missed the introduction from the chairperson, whose innovative approach to literacy has transformed learning for thousands of students with processing differences. Please welcome Elena Duarte, creator of the Duarte Method. Taking a deep breath, Elena walked onto the stage, blinking in the bright lights as applause filled the auditorium. She had given this presentation a dozen times now at smaller venues, but never to such a large and influential audience. Thank you for that warm welcome, she began, her Argentine accent still present, but her English now polished and confident. I'm here today to talk about a different way of thinking about literacy challenges, not as disabilities, but as differences in how children process and interact with written language. As she moved through her presentation, showing videos of children using her methods and sharing compelling before and after data, Elena felt the audience's energy shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. Questions during the interactive portions were thoughtful and enthusiastic. The key insight, she explained, pointing to a brain imaging slide Dr. Chen had helped her obtain, is that we're not fixing something broken. We're building alternate pathways that work with each child's unique processing style. As she concluded to enthusiastic applause, Elena noticed movement at the back of the auditorium, someone arriving late. Her heart nearly stopped when she recognized Adrian Walker, standing alone by the door, watching her intently. During the Q&A session, Elena maintained her composure, answering questions with clarity and passion, all while acutely aware of Adrian's presence. He didn't ask any questions, just observed with an unreadable expression. As the session ended and educators crowded around Elena with follow-up questions, she lost sight of him. It was only later, as the exhibition hall was clearing for lunch, that he approached her booth. "Ms. Duarte?" "Mr. Walker." Elena squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. "I didn't expect to see you here." He looked different somehow, less polished, more human. There were new lines around his eyes, and his posture lacked its former rigidity. "I read the article about your program in educational leadership. The results are impressive." "Thank you." Elena wasn't sure what else to say. The legal battle between BrightPath and Nextech was still ongoing, though increasingly in her favor since the recovery of her thesis. Adrian cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." Of all the things Elena had imagined Adrian might say, this wasn't one of them. She waited, unwilling to make this easy for him. "When you worked for us, I was not in a good place." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "After Sarah died, I threw myself into work. It was easier than facing what was happening with Leo. When you succeeded where everyone else had failed..." He paused. "My pride got in the way. I wanted to be the one who solved the problem." Elena's expression remained neutral. It wasn't about solving a problem. It was about seeing Leo for who he really is. Adrian nodded slowly. "I know that now." He hesitated, then added, "He asks about you. Still." The mention of Leo sent a pang through her heart. "How is he?"
Greeting at grade level. A small, genuine smile briefly transformed Adrian's face. "He has a collection of adventure books he keeps by his bed, reads every night before sleep." "I'm glad," Elena said softly. "He's using your method, not mine," Adrian admitted. "We switched back after..." He cleared his throat again. "After he told me the Next Tech program wasn't the same as Miss Elena's special way." Elena couldn't help but smile at that. He always was perceptive. Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you. Our legal department has prepared it." Elena tensed, not reaching for it. "Another confidentiality agreement?" "No." He placed it on the table between them. "It's a settlement offer. Nextech will withdraw the Walker method from the market, acknowledge the Duarte method as the original work, and provide compensation for the use of your intellectual property without proper attribution." Elena stared at the envelope. "Why now? Your lawyers have been fighting this for months." Adrian's gaze dropped briefly. "Let's just say I've had some perspective shifts recently." He paused. "And Leo found your thesis online. He might be only 7, but he understood enough to ask some very uncomfortable questions about why your name wasn't on our reading program." Despite everything, Elena felt a surge of pride for the boy she'd come to care for deeply. "He's going to be quite something when he grows up." "Yes," Adrian agreed softly. "He already is." He gestured to the envelope. "The settlement includes something else. A request, actually. Nextech's educational division would like to license the Duarte method, properly this time, with full attribution and your oversight on implementation. Your publisher would retain all rights. We'd simply be a technology partner for the digital components." Elena raised her eyebrow. "You want to work together? After everything?" "It's what would be best for the children who need this program," Adrian said simply. "Your expertise, our technology, and distribution channels." He straightened his shoulders. "And there's one more request. though this one is personal. Leo would very much like to see you again, if you're willing." The exhibition hall had emptied around them, the lunch break in full swing. Elena looked at Adrian Walker, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. Not as the imperious CEO or the demanding employer, but as a flawed, grieving father who had made significant mistakes but was trying to make amends. She said, "I'll consider the settlement, after my lawyers review it thoroughly." Adrian nodded, accepting this. As for Leo, Elena smiled. "I'd love to see him. I've missed him very much." Relief visibly washed over Adrian's face. "Thank you." He turned to go, then paused. "You know, when Sarah was diagnosed, she made me promise to make sure Leo would be okay. I thought that meant making sure he succeeded academically, had every advantage. I didn't understand until recently that being okay meant something much more fundamental."
"Being seen," Elena said quietly. "Being valued for exactly who he is." "Yes," Adrian met her eyes. "That's what you gave him when I couldn't. I won't forget it again." As he walked away, Elena opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the settlement figure. It was more than enough to secure her future, expand her program, and perhaps even establish the educational foundation she'd begun to dream about. 1 year later. And that concludes our official ribbon-cutting ceremony. The mayor of Seattle beamed at the assembled crowd. The Duarte Center for Learning Differences is now officially open. Applause erupted as Elena cut the bright red ribbon stretched across the entrance to the renovated building in Rainier Valley. What had once been an abandoned community center was now a state-of-the-art facility where children with learning differences could receive specialized support using the Duarte method regardless of their family's financial situation. The settlement money from Next Tech had provided the initial funding, but it was the subsequent partnership, Elena's expertise combined with Next Tech's technological resources, that had transformed her vision into reality on a scale she could never have imagined. As the crowd began to tour the facility, Elena felt a tug on her sleeve. She looked down to see Leo, now 8 years old and considerably taller, grinning up at her. "Can I show Dad this sensory reading room? I helped design it." "Of course," Elena smiled, ruffling his hair affectionately. "It's your expertise he needs." As Leo eagerly pulled his father toward the specialized room designed for children with significant sensory processing challenges, Elena watched them go with a sense of peace that had been hard-won over the past 2 years. The partnership with Next Tech had been initially tense, but ultimately transformative, not just for the program, but for the relationships between all involved. Adrian had proven to be a different man than the one who had fired her, especially once he committed to genuine change, both professionally and as a father. "Quite a day," Dr. Chen commented, joining Elena. "From fired nanny to educational pioneer with a multi-million-dollar center. Not bad for 2 years' work." I laughed. "When you put it that way, it sounds simple." "Nothing about this journey was simple," Dr. Chen said, her tone growing serious. "But you never lost sight of what mattered, the children who needed your method." "Speaking of which," Elena said, checking her watch, "the first group of students arrives tomorrow morning, 20 children whose schools haven't been able to help them learn to read." "And they'll leave as readers," Dr. Chen said confidently, "just like Leo did." Later that evening, after the crowds had departed and only the core team had remained, Elena found herself alone in the main reading room. The walls were lined with books of all kinds, the tables set with materials ready for small hands to explore, the tablets loaded with the interactive components of the Duarte method. "He would be proud," Adrian said simply. "I think so," Elena agreed. "This center The publishing deal, the technology partnership, it's all beyond anything I imagined. But the real triumph is each individual child who discovers they can read after believing they couldn't. Through the window, they could see the lights of Seattle shining against the night sky, the Space Needle illuminated in the distance. You know, Adrian said thoughtfully, when I fired you, I thought I was protecting my business interests. What I didn't understand was that some things are more valuable than patents or profit margins. Like what? Elena asked. Like watching your child's face when they read their first book on their own, like knowing you've helped open doors that seemed permanently closed. He looked at her directly, like having the courage to admit when you're wrong and try to make it right. Elena smiled. Well, we both got there in the end. As they stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the city where their unlikely journey had begun, Elena reflected on the twisting path that had led her here, from immigrant nanny to educational entrepreneur, from being fired to finding her true calling. Tomorrow, 20 children would walk through the doors of the Duarte Center, each carrying the weight of past failures and disappointments. By the time they left, they would have the tools to see those failures not as personal defects, but as signposts pointing toward their own unique learning paths. And that, Elena thought, was worth every hardship she had endured along the way. The door opened and Adrian entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, offering one to Elena. Leo finally crashed. Mrs. Phillips is taking him home. Thank you. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. The relationship between her and Adrian had evolved into something she never could have predicted. Not quite friendship, but a respectful partnership built on shared goals and mutual recognition of past mistakes. So, Adrian said, looking around the room, is it everything you imagined? Elena considered the question. It's more. When I was developing this method in Buenos Aires, working with children in neighborhoods where resources were scarce, I never dreamed it could reach this scale. Your thesis, the one that proved your prior claim to the method, I read it all, not just the parts our lawyers needed. He paused. There was a dedication at the beginning. To your father. She nodded, surprised he had noticed. He was a teacher in a poor district of Buenos Aires. He believed every child deserved a chance to learn, regardless of their circumstances or challenges. He died when I was young, but his philosophy shaped everything I did. If this story of perseverance, innovation, and standing up for what's right resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps support more content like this that celebrates the transformative power of education and the importance of valuing each person's unique gifts. Share in the comments if you've ever had a teacher who saw your potential when others didn't. I read every comment and would love to hear your stories.